Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Illinois House of Representatives Virtual Job Fair. Today, we will be hearing from 5 presenters hiring for various positions within the Office of the Speaker, as well as the Office of the Clerk. If you have questions at any time, please type them into the chat and we will address them during the Q&A session that will be taking place after all presentations have concluded. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available on the Illinois workNet YouTube channel for you to refer to later. Now, I am pleased to introduce Pamela with the Illinois House of Representatives Office of the Speaker. Pamela?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I thank you for giving us your time. We would like to start with a video from our Chief of Staff, Tiffany Moy.
I think working in the House of Representatives is an amazing opportunity for anyone who has an interest in government, in politics, and getting things done. The reason why we're having this job fair is to recruit the best and brightest talent from across the state to work for us. You know, we're a growing staff, and it's important that we are doing everything we can to recruit a diverse staff that reflects our state and can help our caucus and our office take the work that we're doing now to the next level. One thing that you find when working for elected officials is so many people just want to be heard, and they want to know that someone cares and that someone's trying to help them. There is nowhere else in the state where you can get the experience that you will get working on House Democratic staff. You come out of this experience with a skill set that nobody else in the state, certainly nobody else in the country has, and that's invaluable.
So I would like to introduce everyone who is participating today. First, we have Justin Cox. He is the Chief Counsel to the Speaker. Then we have Kylie Kelly. She's Deputy Director of the Issues Unit. Then we have Mark Jarmer, who is our Director of Research and Appropriations Unit. We have John Hollman, who is the Clerk of the House. And I'm Pam Lassiter, the HR Director and EEO Officer. The agenda for this time we're spending together will be a discussion of the structure of the General Assembly, an overview of the legislative process, the structure and the functions of the Office of the Clerk, the structure and functions of the Office of the Speaker, and then we'll have time at the end for questions and discussion. I'd like to spend a moment to talk about the organizational mission of the Office of the Speaker. Here at the Office of the Speaker, we strive to improve the lives of all Illinoisans through the development of public policy that, at its core, reinforces respect for all people. We will create and support a workplace where we can share ideas and work through problems and conflicts in a collaborative way, where our differences lead to a better understanding of each other, and we can come together to find common ground. As we come together to accomplish these goals, we will be mindful of acting with transparency and accountability, showing loyalty to our teammates, and always standing against prejudice and hate. Let's spend a moment talking about our core values. The first, let's maintain professional and ethical conduct at all times, embrace teamwork and collaboration to accomplish our goals, demonstrate respect and kindness for ourselves and others, display openness to the opportunities that change and new ideas can bring. Recognize that inclusivity leads to creative ideas and innovation. Work always towards improved efficiency and effectiveness of outputs. Commit to a continuous learning environment and provide support to others in their demonstration of these values.
As the first Black Speaker of the Illinois House of Representatives in our 200+ year history of the state, I'm extremely proud to be a voice for diversity and equity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is what I fought for my entire life. In this position, I get to lead by example and practice what I preach. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is what we want in the Speaker's office. It's a great feeling to work on a piece of policy that impacts someone's daily lives. What you do here is going to change your life. And I think that it's just the start to something even greater. And so we want to make sure that the people that come work for us are honest, they have integrity, and they come here and work with pride. We believe in the team approach. What we do here is work together and we get big things done. I'm excited about doing a job fair and giving someone opportunities that they didn't know existed. Each and every day that we get to go to work is because we're actually helping someone that particular day. And so if you want to help people, this is the right place for you.
So thank you all for joining us today. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for everyone to help join us on this venture. But let me tell you, for those of you who may not know, what exactly is the General Assembly and what do we do? We're a bicameral unit of state government, which means that we have both the House and the Senate, much like they do in Congress, but we focus on Illinois and the citizens of Illinois specifically. Our Senate is made of 59 districts. There are currently 41 Democrats and 18 Republicans, whereas us in the House, we have 118 districts. Currently 73 are Democrats and 45 Republicans. I've been working with the General Assembly for many years, where that number has been, 62, I think was the lowest amount of the majority party, up to a few years ago when it was actually 75 Democrats. And so it's always in flux every 2 years because we actually have our House members elected every 2 years. Senate is kind of different. They it's kind of a mix of 2 or 4 year terms every 10 years. But what's very exciting about the upcoming election and what will be in the 103rd General Assembly, which will be here in a year, is that all 177 members are actually going to be up for election that year, which only happens once every 10 years. And we will also have our constitutional officers up that year. So this is a very exciting time for you guys to be interested in joining us. And I think this would be good for everyone. If we go to next screen, please. So just a very general overview of what we do in the process. Once again, the members come to Springfield to set policy for the entire state of Illinois. They discuss bills in committees, things that are vetted through committees and are approved by the committees go to the entire floor for action and debate by the entire House of Representatives. That's where your state rep and your state senator are allowed to provide input on the policy of the state. And so everything from the big issues of the day to just very small localized fixes for citizens, this is where it happens. They also approved state budget, where they have those discussions of should we either raise or lower taxes, or what should we do with the level of state spending? Should that go up? Should it go down? What is the best way for us to represent our state and the values that we provide? The Senate does gubernatorial appointments, so the governor will make some appointments to specified commissions or agencies, and the Senate reviews those. And also, the entire General Assembly will consider constitutional amendments, either federal or state. So that's, once again, always very amazing to sit and watch to see what happens with our state reps, representatives, and senators when they meet. Typically, our session schedules are January through May each year, and then usually 2 weeks in the, which we usually call the veto session, which is usually October or November. We will actually be going to veto session for the next 2 weeks, starting next week. So if you have an interest, feel free to watch us on ilga.gov next week and see what we do. Very specifically, so I am Clerk of the House, John Hollman. So my office is kind of different than the rest of the office of the Speaker. is because we are actually the bipartisan area. So we're the record keeper for the General Assembly. So I have a journal room, committee clerks, E&E transcription, fiscal office. These offices provide the records for the entire General Assembly. So any action happened by the members, we record them, we make sure that everything's done properly and in the correct order. We certify that things have happened procedurally correctly. And this is what we do. We're behind the scenes. We're making sure that everything's done properly. We also have, including, I'm currently looking for some legislative receptionists, and we also have some positions of post office and janitors. These are also behind the scenes, kind of making sure that the nuts and bolts of what the members want can happen effectively. Once again, if you have any interest, feel free to look at our website. I think we'll have information on that afterwards, and let us know how you would like to be involved.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, John. And I do believe our next presenter will be Mark Jarmer. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Mark, Director of the Research and Appropriations Unit.
You did. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm very excited to speak with all of you. I was fortunate enough to do an internship in the Arizona legislature when I was doing my undergraduate. And I think that was a very, very valuable experience to me. Because the theoretics, I was a poli-sci major, the theoretics that you pick up in 4 years of undergrad or maybe some post-grad work or, postdoc work even, that theory-based education is valuable, but sausage gets made a lot differently than they teach about. And so it's been a thrilling thing for me to be involved in for the past 13 years. And I would not have known about this opportunity were it not for the internship that I took that exposed me to it. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do in the Research and Appropriations Unit. And then at the very tail would be part of that question and answer period. Can I have the next one, please? So the technical and the Research and Appropriations Unit is comprised of 10 to 15 research analysts. They have a very diverse background. Some of them come directly to me after completing a bachelor's degree, others from a master's or even a PhD. And then we have some that have applied that have been working in the field or working out in another vocation for a number of years, and they're starting to retool. So there's a lot of diversity in the background and education. I look at being a research analyst pretty similarly to how I think they talk to you if you're a medical school applicant. You know, I always thought that you had to be a heavy science major like calculus and trig and chemistry to be a good physician. But I found out not too long ago that they also enjoy people from music majors, for example, because of the way in which they think. And so I don't think that there's a particular education that necessarily is better than another for this line of work. I think we commonly have political science majors, people who are pre-law, history majors, but we have all kinds. So there's not really a set education. We do ask that those that apply for the job hold at least a bachelor's degree. It's also very important that you're located in Springfield just because of the hours that we work, and I'll talk about that in this next block. Our regular working conditions are the following. During January to May, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It can get pretty intense. And by that, in the first half of session, you normally report at about 8:15, and then you leave around 7 o'clock. In the month of May, it can be considerably longer than that. However, I would also say that during the months of June through December, it's a more relaxed schedule. You have more time to go out and learn about your agencies by touring them on the ground. You have the ability to find out in more depth about issues that you're going to work on in the next session, which is extremely valuable. So, but in summary, we work a pretty frenetic, hectic schedule half of the year, and it's a little bit more relaxed the rest of the time. As far as the environment is concerned, I think the most important thing that I could tell you is this is an environment where you feel privileged to be a part of it. And I mean that in every sense of the word. I have met more people of quality, character, and candor in this job than almost anywhere else. And the kinds of people you work around in this building are the kinds of people, they're a lot like you. I mean, they have a passion for public policy. They want to help people that are dispossessed or disenfranchised. They want to help those among us that cannot often help themselves. And so the environment can be a very thrilling one from that aspect because it's very feel-good work. But again, I would say that it's very challenging too. Not only just the time commitment, but the types of issues that you would work around. If you're in human services, for example, you're talking about, I was telling an applicant this morning, I will never forget a human services committee where there was a young girl and her parents there, and she had a affirmity, and they were seeking redress for that. And just hearing that little girl's story, so touching, so moving. And I think that can be hard at times, but it's the kind of work that you feel good about doing because you're helping those that are vulnerable. As far as traits of an effective analyst, I think curiosity is the biggest one. I'm glad it's placed first on the slide, just because your work is so varied. And this, I'm going to kind of answer working conditions and traits here. From day to day, you don't know what you're going to be working on. I place you in a silo of opportunity, like maybe human services. But it's quite frequent that I'll be asked to have somebody take care of a one-off situation. And that's where the curiosity comes into play. Everything that you're handed, no matter how big or how small, is really an opportunity for you. And that's not a buzzword. It's a door opening for you to introduce yourself to the people that work in that space, both the legislators and the stakeholders. It's an opportunity for you to gain the basic vocabulary of that field or that idea. And then finally, it's an opportunity for you to show your stuff. And one thing is true about the legislature among many things, but one thing is certainly true. You will be as busy as you merit. And what I mean by that is people that work hard and deliver quality work will find themselves inundated with requests from legislators, right? Because they're very interested in getting the job done. If you're somebody that they see is moving around a lot and working with a lot of people, and there's a lot of word of mouth in any organization, this one included, if you're working hard on one person's project, you're going to get applications for others. So there's that aspect to it. In terms of listening, I think that it's an amazing skill to be a good listener. And I think what this job does for the analyst is, because you're in a position of, as staff, you're assisting the legislator. You're never driving the bus, you're helping them get to where they want to go. By taking that approach, pardon me, and really listening to not only what the member wants or the sponsor of a piece of legislation wants, but what are those that are opposed to it saying? What's the subtext of what they're saying? What are they really afraid or opposed to? You can pick up a lot in terms of being a very good listener. And it's a common thing that I see a lot, especially when we're new. We like to talk a lot and show people that we get it. We're tracking, we're following you. But I think it's a very important skill to learn to listen quietly, because I think you pick up a lot. As far as communicating, you would need to be gifted in two ways, really. You need to be able to write very clearly. And this is something for those of us that come out of academia, that come here, may be a little bit of a challenge. I'll admit it was for me. I had been teaching for a decade before I came here. And so I was used to pontificating for hours at a time, especially for night sections. But here, members have a very limited time bandwidth. Oftentimes, they're going to read what you write as they take the vote or shortly before they take the vote. So you've got to be concise, you've got to be clear, and you've got to get to the heart of the matter. And what that really means is you're going to get handed a bill, sometimes that'll be 5 pages in length, but you'll also get bills that are 1,000. And regardless of how long or short the bill is, you need to be able to congeal it down to 1 or 2 pages very concisely and accurately and get to the heart of the matter so that the member can rely on you and know that when you read through a bill that you have insight. Attention to detail dovetails right along with that. This is a place where we can fix almost anything. It's not that we can't fix things, but people are reliant. And I think relying on us getting it right. And I think where I learned that the most was during COVID. We went through a very strange situation in this unit during that because we had to put the budget together largely with, with all the isolation and everything else that was going around. And there was a lot of need. There still is. It's very important that once we pass that budget, that as much as possible, everything is perfect so that we don't have further delays. And I'm not going to say that we don't. We make mistakes. We're human, of course. But our goal is for perfection and to pay very close attention to detail. And then finally, and this is one that I think is extremely instrumental in building you professionally, it's being able to speak truth to power. It's being able to tell somebody you admire very much that has come to you saying, hey, I really like this idea. How can we get it done? If you see holes in it, it takes courage to sometimes stand up and say it, but that's your job. So speaking truth to power is one of the things that I think you gain from this position almost more than anything else. Next slide, please. I'll try to speed up a little bit. The key responsibilities in terms of this job, of course, you do a lot of research. Of course, a member will come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Can you find out some of the background? That's a big part of it. We also draft and prepare both substantive and budget legislation. Drafting simply means if it's substantive, putting it into a paragraph form, into verbiage. And with the budget, it similarly, but we have to make sure that we designate all the right recipients and where the money is coming from, et cetera. A lot of that attention to detail goes into drafting. Drafting is not a hard process. It's just a particular one that you have to learn. Analysis, thinking through, the only thing that I would add to that here, we are all familiar, having come through higher education, what it is to analyze a thing. What I try to stress up here on the floor is really focus in on who does it help? Who does it hurt? What does it cost? As far as committee work, when you finish as a legislative staffer, you will be in high demand from all sorts of organizations because knowing how to get something done, knowing the process, how things work on the floor and in committee is critical. With regard to floor debate, you get so much exposure. When you're down there assisting a member on the House floor, oftentimes you appear on television or radio, can be heard on the radio. It's a very public sphere. And I mention that because there are very few jobs where people watch you as intently and intimately doing your work as in this one. Committee work is obviously, and as a design, it's supposed to be very public. And I think that's all good, but you do need to be prepared for that. A lot of work you will do is out in front of everyone. Subject matter hearings are just that. We're not passing a bill. We're just learning about something. We're stating the pros and the cons, having witnesses do that for us. And so we do those. We also, during our appropriations process, we really spend the bulk of our time not drafting, but negotiating. How much is the right amount to spend? If we spend this amount, what does it take from this other field? So that takes a long time to put together. And as I mentioned at the top, about the last month of May in the session is when we really work on that heavily. And then finally, special projects. And with this, I'll just mention one that has been in the news lately. As a country, we're looking at statues and what that iconography means and what kind of a culture that persists in our society today because of some of the statuaries we honor or statues we honor. So one of the special projects that my unit has worked with, and Justin, who you'll hear from here in a moment, his unit was also instrumental in this, was the removal of the Stephen Douglas portrait and statue outside to new locations. Getting to be a part of something like that, or getting to be a part of just being a legislative staffer during COVID, those are opportunities that don't come around every day. And so I think working here in the unit will give you a lot of variation in what you work on. It's not the kind of job that you're going to get bored because you're doing the same thing. Next, please. And this is Justin.
Thanks, Mark. I get the unfortunate position of having to follow you and your passionate description of the job. And I will say at the start, and probably mention this throughout, a lot of the things that Mark said apply equally to the technical review unit and the office in general. But every unit's a little unique. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Justin Cox. I'm the Chief Counsel for the Speaker. I'm also the parliamentarian for the House. Basically, parliamentarian means you interpret and provide advice related to the rules. And I'm also the ethics officer for the House Democrats, providing ethics advice to members and staff as well. And then lastly, I'm the director of the technical review unit. So no, this is not, we don't deal with computers or anything. This is the legal unit of the staff. And as I mentioned, there's a decent amount of overlap in what we do and what the research unit does. But we kind of deal with different aspects. We certainly are not dealing as much with the budget. They don't really want to give all the math issues to the lawyer staff. So, but we're doing very similar types of jobs. So normally for this unit, we'll have on staff 8 to 12 attorneys that are contract attorneys for the spring session each year. In recent years, we've had more individuals who are returning staff. So sometimes maybe half of that number is returning staff, and maybe they've been here through one session or two sessions. And then the rest will be new staff that comes on contract. We also generally have, obviously, myself and one or two other full-time attorneys. That's been our structure before, or that may be changing in the future, but that's generally been how we've been structured for a fairly long time. And on backgrounds and education, we look for, I would say most of the attorneys that come on to staff are pretty fresh out of law school, either just starting out or maybe to have 1 or 2 years of experience. But there's often times where we get people who've been out there for 5+ years, 10+ years in some cases. So we really kind of look for that diverse background and education as well. As Mark mentioned, we always have a lot of individuals who come from a kind of political science background, maybe something communications related. And then obviously we're required as attorneys to have their JD, but prior to that, all over the place. Certainly me, I was pre-law, but I also I have my business degree, and really I personally didn't have a extensive background in politics or the legislature, and I don't think it's required to do this job. Certainly it can help. It can give you kind of a leg up on the start to know how the General Assembly functions and know a little bit about the process. But for the most part, when staff's coming in, you're all coming in at the same kind of level. And there's a steep learning curve to understand the process, understand what is important to members, what is important to the speaker, what's important to constituents, and being able to get that down. It can take potentially the whole spring session. Oftentimes, you'll get here and you'll feel a little lost. You'll get the training in the first couple of weeks and you'll be overwhelmed. And then that slowly, as the process goes along and you go through each step in the legislative process, things start fitting together, and you really feel at the end of the spring session that you have a good grasp, and you'll be thinking about things in a much different way than you were when you started. As Mark mentioned with his staff, we are primarily located in Springfield during session. So each of those session weeks, we are down in Springfield. We do also have a Chicago office where when we're not in session, and for example, in the summer, in the fall, for those who are still on, have the opportunity to work out of there. But as of right now, we have some people in Chicago, we have some people in Springfield, but for the most part, when we are in session time, we are focused in Springfield, but I would say most of our attorney staff do come from the Chicago area. We do provide, as part of kind of incentive, is we reimburse travel, so you can go back and forth between home and Springfield for the week, and then we also give per diem as well for being in Springfield. So each day you're in Springfield working at the Capitol, which you saw a great video of. It's a beautiful building to work in. You get a per diem of $65 per day, or you get reimbursed for your hotel if you stay in a hotel instead of renting a place. Most staff will work or live pretty close to the Capitol. As Mark mentioned, a lot of long hours, late days, makes it a lot easier for individuals to be pretty close to the Capitol, but it's not required, certainly. Mark touched on the schedule. When we are in session, we're there at least by 8 a.m. in the morning, and then as early as 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, many times later than that, potentially going over into past midnight. So they can be very long days when we're in session. Non-session days, or days when we are out of the normal spring session time, that's a more normal 8:30 to 4:30 type situation. You have a little more flexibility in time, but much longer hours, obviously, during session when we are there, and especially when we're there, the members are there for session. The environment, for our unit, I think, as well as the other units, it's very team oriented. But as Mark mentioned, it can be chaotic throughout the session. On the day-to-day basis, even though you have your general set hours, and you have an idea of what you think you're going to do, and I'll walk through kind of what our unit does on the day-to-day, but every day is going to be different. You can start out thinking you're going to be in committee at one time, knowing you're going to be in committee one time, then kind of thinking you have some free time after that, and 10 things are going to pop up, and you're going to have to juggle all those. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but it'll be fast-paced, but we are, kind of all working towards the same goal, and you have everyone down there all at the same time, doing those same types of things. So individuals who, may come to Springfield and not know anyone, will really bond with their fellow staffers. You're kind of all in the trenches doing the same thing behind the scenes for members, and helping the state enact great policy. So you really become a tight-knit group, and it's challenging, but is extremely worth it and rewarding to be in this position. And the speaker mentioned in the video, to be able to develop policy, help individuals, and enact legislation that impacts Illinois citizens in their day-to-day life. It's incredibly rewarding experience, and you learn a lot through this job. Some traits of effective counsel. Mark hit on a lot of them. They carry over into this too, but particularly for counsel, clear and concise writing. This is a different style writing than we normally do in law school, or maybe in private practice. These aren't briefs. We're not getting any awards for how long we are writing. We try to be very concise and brief, and get to the point, and communicate effectively in a way that individuals can understand, individuals that are not lawyers. We have a very diverse background of members, so when we're communicating to them, we can't just provide the lawyer speak. We need to talk to them as anyone could pick that up if they've never talked about the subject before or heard about it. that is incredibly important in this job. As I mentioned, we all come from different backgrounds. So, you may have a really great background in criminal law or in environmental law, but then you may be dealing with a whole different area of law that you need to explain. So you really need to study that, be able to distill it and understand it, and be able to present it to members and communicate effectively. Sound legal reasoning is certainly important. We are assessing the laws here. We're determining if something is unconstitutional or not, and making good policy judgments. So that sound legal reasoning comes in. Definitely is important. And Mark hit on attention to detail. It's can't imagine how important it is. And I think it's very easy as you come in as new staff to maybe skip over details or think some details aren't important, but every single word in a bill is important. And I think you hone those skills throughout this job. So we'll hit the responsibilities that we're doing. I'll give an overview. I kind of like to break it down into 4 main parts. The first is our bill work. Mark talked about this. We are drafting legislation. We are analyzing every single piece of legislation that comes before the House. And we're doing that for the members. We're doing that for your unit directors. Mark and I will be presenting each bill to our leadership and kind of giving a summary of your summary to the leaders so that they know and are aware of all the bills that are out there. The members, they don't have time to read through every single bill. That's really on the staff. So we are reading those bills, giving them a concise summary of what the bill is doing, who wants it and why, and giving them all that background to help them inform them about how they want to vote on a particular bill, or will this be good for their constituents or not. That's really what information that they're getting from us. So as part of that bill work, we're also negotiating bills, negotiating amendments, all of that, and kind of seeing those bills through the process. Mark mentioned committee work a little bit in there. We are helping the chairperson, providing guidance on following the House rules, making sure committee runs smoothly, and doing anything that the members need in there. On the floor, Mark mentioned the floor debate. That's really where we are standing next to the sponsor and this Democratic sponsor, and assisting them and answering any questions that may come up that they may not be sure on. And that happens, quite a bit. We do have a lot of great members who know their bills backwards and forwards, but for the most part, they're relying on staff to have all that knowledge. And the staff going through the process of analyzing will have talked to a lot of the stakeholders, will be familiar with the different questions that may come up. So we'll be whispering in their ear and helping them kind of work through the floor debate and answer questions when they aren't sure what the answer is. Also assisting, the staff assists me in my parliamentary duties and standing up on the podium and making sure that when we're on the floor, that like committees, it's kind of running smoothly and according to the House rules. And the last area is really legal research, memos that you may be doing for the speaker, for me, for other members, and just other special projects kind of here and there that may pop up throughout the session. And it does really kind of ebb and flow, and it may depend on the particular committee that you're assigned. And I failed to mention this in committee work. Usually the attorneys are on 2 to 3 committees each, and those kind of become your areas of expertise throughout the session. You handle those bills that are going through those committees. Mark mentioned the opportunities that this job opens up, and I think it's true for the attorneys. We have people at the Attorney General's office, state's attorneys, individuals that work now at the federal level in Congress. We have former staffers that are judges, members of the General Assembly, either in representatives or in the Senate, local officials, local government opportunities, state government opportunities, liaisons at agencies. Then we have a lot of people who go into lobbying or private practice, large firms or small firms, kind of runs the gamut. But certainly this is a great job to be able to network, to get to know a lot of individuals who may be in the government space. You make a lot of connections, but most importantly, you learn a lot and develop and hone your skills as attorneys and come out with unique experience that not many attorneys really have. But I think we're ready to move on to the next unit.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kylie Kelly. I'll try and keep it brief so that we have enough time for Q&A, but I'm going to give a presentation on both the legislative unit and the communications unit. These are both two new units within our office. I would say all the responsibilities of these staffers are things that our office currently does, but we have worked to kind of restructure our units so that we have two units that specialize specifically in these topic areas, one dedicated to legislative work and one dedicated to communications work. So to start with the legislative unit, we will have about 20 to 25 legislative coordinators and then 5 to 7 senior legislative coordinators. The legislative coordinators would be assigned, it'd be one coordinator assigned to 2 state representatives that you'd work with on a daily basis or regular basis, kind of on a lot of different things that I'll get into later. And then the senior legislative coordinators will work through a lot of the similar responsibilities, but they would also manage the legislative coordinators and then have some higher level legislative responsibilities as well. So the background of many people in this position, it's typically a role that a lot of recent college graduates enter into. But we do take people with very diverse backgrounds, diverse, education levels and different degrees and different work experience. A lot of different people sometimes have either interned or worked in different state agencies or sometimes on political campaigns and kind of got their first step into state government, maybe in a different government office. The positions that we're hiring for right now are all based in Springfield. And then very similar to what Mark and Justin already talked about in terms of schedule in our offices is applicable to this unit as well. Our office though is physically located directly next to the Capitol building in Springfield, but on non-session days, we work out of the Stratton building out, right next door to the Capitol. And then on session days, we kind of bounce back and forth between our office here, the Capitol building, committee rooms, members' offices here within the same building, and just kind of all over the Capitol complex. We work very much in a team environment. We have to depend a lot on our coworkers in order to get things done. And it's a very collaborative and team-oriented environment. The traits of someone in this position really requires a lot of clear communication, both verbally and written communication skills. That's not only to the members that you're working with, but also to your colleagues, and then occasionally to the public as well. It really requires an ability to take complex legislative issues and talk about them in a pretty easily digestible way. I would say it's very important to be able to pay close attention to detail and manage a lot of different tasks all at one time. As Mark and Justin already covered, especially during the legislative session schedule, the work environment is very fast paced and we all deal with a lot of different responsibilities all at one time. So you might be tasked with, helping member prep for an upcoming committee hearing, and then having to make sure at the same time that you have other members showing up to a committee hearing that's happening right at that time. So it's really just kind of a lot of different tasks and responsibilities that are all need to be balanced all at one time. And we can go on to the next slide. So the way I like to boil this unit down, it's really the role here is to help members of the House Democratic Caucus craft a legislative agenda and their legislative priorities, and then provide support to our members in order to work through the entire legislative process from start to finish. So we develop ideas for them, that sometimes brainstorming new ideas of bills or legislation that members should introduce. Sometimes that's doing research on different states and different laws in other parts of the country and trying to find ways that we can implement those here in Illinois, or researching a local issue that a member's working on, or something that's going on back home, and trying to find a legislative solution to that through introducing a bill. And so we work with members in order to do that. And we work very hand in hand with the research units and the tech review units to draft legislation. And then we also work with them throughout the committee process. So each legislative coordinator would be assigned to a couple of different committees, where you would be kind of the assigned staffer that makes sure that every part of the committee runs smoothly. So making sure that members show up on time and know where to be, giving them kind of a briefing on what bills are coming up before committee and have an understanding of what those bills do. And then helping your members that you individually are assigned to also prepare for the committees that they sit on. And so, helping them to develop talking points if they have to present a bill to other members of the committee, to make sure that they can adequately explain what the bill actually does, making sure that they work with other members of the committee to get enough yes votes before they call the bill, to make sure that it can successfully pass through committee. And I would say the committee work is definitely the most fast-paced part of the job. It's making sure that your members have all the support that they need in order for everything to get through the legislative process effectively. There would also be a component of kind of managing their day-to-day schedules while they are here in Springfield, and then coordinating also with their district offices back home. But while they're here in Springfield, you would kind of be their go-to person for everything that they need in terms of meetings with lobbyists or organizations, or maybe they have a constituent group coming to visit, and helping to plan all of those things. Maintaining and tracking different files for them, so they always know every single day what's kind of coming up on their schedule, and making sure that they're prepared to deal with all those issues on a day-to-day basis. So providing them copies of the bills that they have coming up that day, talking points that they need for that day, and kind of their schedule for the entire day while they're here in Springfield. And then again, just coordinating with all the other units. A lot of the work that we do, we couldn't do it without the help and support of someone from research staff or tech review staff. So we are in communication with them on a pretty regular basis. That's pretty much it for the legislative unit. So I'll move on to the communications unit next. So the communications unit is, we are hiring between 5 to 7 communications specialists. And then we also have some current photographers, graphic designers, and a videographer and other technical support staff that would be part of this unit. The background for this position is, again, just like many of the other ones, a lot of diverse work experience, I think, but particularly individuals who do have some experience working in some type of communication role, whether that's with social media, press, or any digital communication. I would say this is a unit that is ever evolving. As you guys all know, there's so much with technology that changes on a regular basis. And so we're looking for candidates who can adapt to those changes and make sure that our office is kind of on the forefront of communicating to constituents. These positions are located in Springfield. The office similarly is based in the building next to the Capitol, but it does require a lot of kind of movement around the Capitol complex, meeting with members in their offices here in Springfield, going over to some of the committee rooms, following along what's all happening there. and kind of just moving around quite a bit here in the Capitol. And I meant to mention it with the legislative unit, but this one as well does require, it will require a small amount of travel occasionally, sometimes to members' district offices or potentially to a press event that we need in-person staff at. These positions require very strong written communication skills, especially with AP knowledge. We write a lot of press releases that have to be written in AP format. Strong persuasion skills in order, we have to take these legislative issues and communicate them in a way that is interesting and gives constituents a reason to care about the issues that our members are talking about. A proficiency in social media outlets, that's something that we have expanded on a lot in the past several years. We try to make sure that every one of our members has a presence on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, some form of a website or an electronic newsletter. And so working on all those different types of platforms. And then just like all the other units, a strong interest in state government and politics. So we can move on to the next slide. So the communications unit is mostly responsible for helping shape our members' public image. And as I mentioned before, just taking very complex legislative issues and public policy and boiling it down into a way that really your average person can understand it and will care about it. And so we do that through a lot of different outlets and different mediums. And so just some of the traditional ones that we use are writing press releases. So maybe a member introduces a bill that is really great for their community. And so we make sure to highlight that in a press release so that it hopefully could either get picked up by their local media, or we could at least broadcast it through social media channels. Developing targeted messaging. So while we do work for all House Democrats within our caucus, they are all very diverse and represent very diverse communities. And so our messaging needs to reflect that. So if you're working with a member from the city of Chicago, the way that they talk about an issue will be a lot different than a member who represents a community in central Illinois. So developing a message targeted to the communities that they represent is very important. And developing communication materials for members. So we create a lot of different like newsletters and distribution material that they can use to explain the legislative work that they're doing to their constituents, both in print media or print copy and digital. We develop and execute strategic communication plans for members. So we like to try and plan out long-term communication plans, both for them, on their digital platforms, but then also work, the communication specialist would also work to kind of develop relationships with their local media and find ways to get their names broadcast locally in their areas. And so building relationships with local media will be important, and making sure that, we always have ways that if our members need to get a message out, that we have the outlets available to us. And then maintaining the website and social media presence for our members, both on an individual basis, but also caucus wide. We have a lot of, we try to encourage almost all of our members to have a broad social media presence. We have that with our caucus pages as well. And so providing support to them in order to maintain all that content and pushing out different messages through all those different channels.
So there are a couple of other units within the Office of the Speaker. They include 16 to 20 individuals in different kinds of roles. We have timekeeping and payroll, certainly my team in human resource management, computer infrastructure development and maintenance, and then of course positions that are in direct support of the members of leadership. So at this time, we would like to take some questions and some follow-up I'd also like to add that hopefully you saw in the chat that Justin noted that he is recruiting for an administrative assistant in the tech review group, and we will have the posting up in a week or so. So we are looking for an admin assistant to work with our legal team. I also saw in the chat box a question around, do we have comparable on the Republican side? I guess I just wanted to make note that we are the Dems. So a lot of our work is in support of them, other than the Office of the Clerk, which is the bipartisan piece. Does the team have anything they'd like to clarify before we turn it over to Q&A?
This is Justin. There was a question in the chat that I received, whether the administrative position, administrative assistant position that for the technical review unit could be filled by a paralegal. And yes, we are certainly open to someone with a paralegal background for that position, and something that I think could be helpful for the individual who gets that job.
There's also a question about the Doorperson role. John, do you have any insight into that?
Yes, I'll send you a direct message, but yeah, Lee Crawford is our current doorkeeper, and we are currently looking for more door personnel who are people who serve on session days only. I will send you a link to his, or a message with his email address to provide more information.
And there was also a question about the communications unit. Kylie, could you handle that?
Yeah, so I saw the first question is about opportunities for advancement within the unit. And I would say there definitely is, especially as this is one of our newer units. I expect this to be, kind of as we see how our staff develops and what the needs are of our members. There may be opportunities for each specialist to take on more responsibility, especially as we, evolve and have to adapt to new technologies. But there will be opportunity for growth. And then I noticed there was also a question about beginning the hiring process for the communications unit. I don't know if Pam wanted to answer that just kind of as an office in general, but actually, I guess I'll deflect to Pam for that one.
Okay, well, the hiring process is to send your resume either through one of the either Indeed or LinkedIn, or even directly through our website, our ILCA website. From there, we will review them with our unit directors. We will probably schedule people, at least initially, for Zoom interviews. So we are still doing those online interviews, but we're also doing some in person as well. So those are the next steps. I see someone talking about the challenges of applying for a state job. I guess one piece is we are not necessarily as part of the state apparatus as other agencies. So I think it's a little easier to get through to us. Question about the legislative unit and how will recruiting be done? Is it done on a rolling basis? Kylie, would you?
Yeah, it's our hope to have all of the positions filled before the end of the year so that we have everyone in place by the start of next legislative session. But I think because it is a larger unit, I would expect that we do occasionally have turnover, and we'd want to make sure that all positions are filled. So while we do hope to fill as many as possible before the end of this year, I imagine there will likely be openings throughout the year at other times too.
And we have a question about applications. I have no preference for which way they come in. Is it Indeed, LinkedIn, or ILGA? They all feed ultimately into the HR unit, so we get them all. So no real preference in that. Justin, do you have an answer to the question about bar passage?
Yeah, so generally we do require passage of the bar before January. However, we have limited circumstances, had exceptions in the past, and hired on individuals who are taking the February bar not necessarily in the assistant counsel position, but more of a assistant type position, and doing similar things, but obviously not providing legal advice. I would say it is kind of difficult to handle all that's going on during session and then also take the February bar and pass it. But we have had that circumstance in the past. So if you're interested, I would still encourage you to apply.
One of the questions was about, do we have positions for a secretary? Actually, we do. If you look at our website, we have roles that are office assistants. Those would be comparable to a secretary. Those do not require a degree. So folks who are interested in that can certainly look to those roles. With this round of hiring, yes, the preferred starting date is before the beginning of January. So that would be our preference. As I said, not all of our jobs require a college degree. So if you look at them closely and read the requirements, quite a few of them do not require a college degree. Any other questions or thoughts? Any last comments from the team?
Hi, Pamela, this is Daniel. I did see a question. I also received a personal message in the chat as well on opportunities for remote work. I know a lot of folks said it had to be on site there in location, but I didn't know if you could elaborate on that a little bit for folks that might be interested in those opportunities.
Since the very purpose of our existence is to support session, during session, we're not really likely to do any kind of remote work. Session, of course, is January through Memorial Day, and the time period from basically June through year end. That time could be in some form of a remote or hybrid, depending on the job and depending on what your unit would permit. But we're fairly clear that session requires you to be here.
Understood. Thank you so much for that, Pamela. And I think what we'll go ahead and do now, unless of course folks want to continue to answer questions that are coming into the chat, we'll probably begin the wrap up of today's session here, since we are a few minutes over time. As you can see on your screen there, that is provided. There's contact information, obviously, to the Human Resources Unit, Office of the Speaker, both phone number and email. I also saw that Justin also left contact information for follow-up on any opportunities or questions that you might have that were covered there today. One other thing that I want to note before we wrap up is that the session has been recorded. So if you joined the session late, or there's anything that you just want to go back and review or delve a little bit more into, that recording will be made available within the next 24 to 48 hours. So again, you can always go back and review that as need be. Of course, thank you to all the presenters that joined us here today, carving time out of your busy schedules to meet with us. A lot of great information. Thank you to the job seekers who attended as well. We hope that the session was fruitful to you and hopefully leads you to the next career opportunity. To any of the presenters, I don't know if there's any last minute remarks you'd like to make.
Just thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.